Before we dive into this episode of Magic Hour, I'm announcing Aries Season Earth Angel Club, which will happen on the spring equinox, March 20th, Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific. Although if you can't join live, the replay will be available. Earth Angel Club is a monthly gathering of like-minded magical people around the world. We do an astrological overview for the zodiac season ahead. I do an energy reading for the group. I give the messages that most want to come through, and then I lead us through a guided angelic meditation. This one will be angelic crowning ceremony. So I cannot wait to share this magic with you and start the astrological new year off right. If you want to join, you can go to angelsandamethyst.com and use code early at checkout for $11 off until Monday, March 17th. Another amazing part of Earth Angel Club is that you get to skip the 2-year waiting list to have a reading with me and sit with me sooner. So I can't wait to connect with you, and I'll see you there. Welcome back to Magic Hour Podcast, my beautiful hummingbirds. I'm your host, Taylor Page.
And I'm Claire. Hello. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone.
I am set aglow by the interview that I had with Aliza today. Like, it's just one of those situations where sometimes you click with people right away, and we just clicked. I truly love her energy. I cannot wait to share the conversation with you guys. It was just such a good one. And before we get into that, I just wanted to talk a little bit in the intro about sort of how I start my own personal birth chart readings. So when I'm sitting with clients, I really like to stress, and I feel like these sentiments are important on a collective level when we talk about astrology right now, because Claire and I were talking a little bit before we hit record about how there's so much kind of negativity and fear mongering in the astrology space these days. And Aliza and I even talk about that a little bit in the interview. And I believe that there is no part of the birth chart. So sometimes we can hear about astrology and we're like, oh my gosh, I have a fixed grand cross in my birth chart and I have all these things that are difficult, and we can start to like co-create with the belief of the difficulty. But I truly believe nothing about astrology is more important than who we choose to be moment to moment, here and now. I fully believe in free will. I think that the planets are a mirror, not necessarily a cause. Like, it's not just because Neptune is moving into Aries that all of this is going to happen. It's mirroring what is happening on Earth and vice versa. So it's all a big mirror. And so that being said, I don't see, and I'm a birth chart astrologer, which is why it was so nice to interview Aliza, because we talk more about big collective themes. And while I do energy readings for the collective and I talk about the current astrology transits, I'm more focused on the interpersonal level than the societal level. So it was really nice to zoom out with her in this conversation. And so when I talk about birth charts and astrology, I don't believe that our birth chart is stagnant or static, rather. I believe that our birth chart is just as alive and dynamic as us, and that every time we go through a process of death and rebirth, every day that we evolve, every day that our consciousness evolves, we will see and understand something new in the birth chart that we weren't ready to see and understand before. Similar to how when we walk into a mirror, a bathroom with a mirror there, what we're going to see in the mirror is different depending on who we are, what we need to see, what we're looking for in the mirror. And I think astrology is no different. And it really highlights where our consciousness is at that moment. So, like, when I first had my birth chart read by my mom when I was young, there was so much that we didn't understand about it. And it's kind of like, okay, yeah, I don't really see that. But that now makes perfect sense based off of the reflection that I have grown into. So I think astrology is such a beautiful tool to put words and ideas and archetypal consciousness onto these sort of ineffable, intangible things that can be hard to put our finger on. But where I don't think it serves us is when it goes into a similar vibration of any spiritual practice that leans towards fear mongering as a way of control or engagement. It's like it has to be of service. And of service, I think that vibration is a little bit more focused on solutions, empowerment, forward momentum, and shining light on things to help give perspective, but not from a place of like doomsday type of energy.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've definitely dealt with different people, and you see it online as well, that are kind of like using the astrological forecast or the information to kind of say, this is what's going to happen and this is how it's going to be, or this is who you are. Even when I look at my chart or my big three, like I feel very much my big three. I always have to laugh. I'm an Aquarius sun, a Pisces moon, a Leo rising, and I feel like so specifically those things. And even within those, like there are many traits within the Aquarius sign that I don't really relate to. Like this aloofness, I always joke, like no one's ever called me aloof a day in my life. So, in that way, it's like I can relate to those things and they can give me information that resonates about who I am. Like I am very romantic. I'm very dreamy. I love the water. Those things ring really true to me about Pisces energy and are good information for me to better understand myself of, oh yeah, I am like that. I do see a connection to it. But I think where it can become really unhelpful is saying like, oh, the astrology is saying it's going to be like this, so you must act this way in order to combat that. And it's like, then I feel like we put ourselves in a box or a cage of our own making, and we have free will. And there's so many factors at play because my free will, your free will, the collective's free will is constantly moving and shifting things. So just because the astrology points to certain things, I think it's more information for us to understand ourselves or to move in a way that will benefit ourselves versus it being like, oh no, look out.
Absolutely. I think astrology can sometimes become a substitute or a crutch instead of connecting to our own intuition and sense of inner authority. And that's never good in any way. And so, yeah, I think astrology, when worked with in a healthy way, is like the most beautiful, magical, accurate tool. Like, I love astrology so much. And then, just like everything, there can be like a shadow side to it. And this sense, especially I've found if your sun is in the ninth house, sometimes you can over identify your story of self based off what your like human design or astrology is saying. And so, the birth chart is not a prescription. It's not telling you this is who you're supposed to be, this is how you're supposed to act. It's more saying, hey, this is a spectrum of archetypal energy that you might be interacting with unknowingly in a shadowy way, or we can shine more awareness on this so you can interact with it in a more positive way. And I think as we go through times of change and uncertainty on planet Earth, we want to latch on to everything's going to be okay. I'm in control. Like, what's the prediction? What's going to happen? But the thing is, we aren't in control. Life is a little bit chaotic and it is bigger than us. And so, doing the best moment to moment that we can here and now is so important. And to your point about not getting the download of what you should be doing, it kind of goes back to that feeling of should is could with shame over it, as they say. Sometimes astrology, you'll be like, I'm having a great day. And then you see a forecast and it's, oh, but this says I shouldn't be having a great day. And now I'm questioning my own experience. I'm actually going to have a self fulfilling prophecy where the day gets hard because my consciousness and awareness shifted there. And that's where I don't think astrology is useful because it's an oversimplification of trying to fit every single soul's experience into one astrological forecast for the week because we have our own chart that is interacting differently with the astrology. So that's where like pop astrology can miss the mark a little bit. And I think that's where it's more about giving an umbrella of possible energetic manifestations of the current energy. But maybe, for example, like when I was trying to find a launch date for Magic Hour, I was like, as an astrologer, there's no way I'm launching it on Mercury retrograde. Like, I just know that. But that meant that it would have to be an eclipse season, baby. And we can get so in our head about that and be like, oh my gosh, but eclipse season is so chaotic. And does that mean that I have to like put a timeout and maybe launch Magic Hour months later than I wanted to? It's like, no, actually, just surrendering to the flow is perfect. Our ego sometimes wants the astrology to be perfect, but sometimes the astrology is just a perfect mirror into everything that we need to see. Like, I was born on Mars retrograde. There are just certain things where it's like, yeah, the timing might not have been perfect, but I believe our soul chooses our birth chart and that we come into this world in divine timing, in perfect timing. And so I think we try in the spiritual world so much to avoid the shadow, mantra over the shadow, love and light over the shadow. And astrology is so great because it's like, no, the shadow's right here. Will you work with it and identify it and love the more difficult aspects, or are you going to just try to disassociate and stay with like love and light consciousness only, which isn't rooted in anything real?
Yeah, it's like a way to control and try and just have positive outcomes. It's like if I plan everything in my life based on the astrology, then it'll only be good and it'll only be in good flow. And it's sometimes our challenges are there to help us. If we avoid all the hard things, we avoid our own potential for growth. And so trying to like control when this should happen because it says the astrology would be good or don't do something today. Like I had a friend, I needed to have a difficult conversation with someone. And she was like, oh, the astrology doesn't look good with his chart. So don't talk to him today. And that was when we had the opportunity to talk. And we had a beautiful conversation that was very healing and very positive. So it was just a good reminder to me of we don't need to control. That is not the point of astrology to then like try and force our existence to be only positive. That's missing the whole point of everything, it feels like.
Yeah, it's not astrology isn't here to tell us what we can or cannot do. Like we need to flow with what is coming up in divine timing. It's maybe just giving us a life raft for better understanding of how to approach it. So if you knew that he was going through a difficult astrological moment, maybe you're like, "Okay, we'll have the talk, but I'll be a little bit more patient with him or a little bit softer or I'll allow more space for the conversation in my day." Like it doesn't just mean don't have the conversation because that astrology is actually just mirroring an important aspect of the energy of the conversation. So, all this to say, when it comes to astrology, and we're in these moments 2025, 2026 that astrologers have been talking about for a long time, especially 2025, of so much change, so much growth, so much transformation, things that set our nervous system aflutter. It can be tempting to really have a hard time with spiritual discernment when it comes to this because we want so much to feel in control. And if there's a consensus in the spiritual world about something, it's sometimes easier to lean into that than trusting our own intuition. And so I just loved this conversation so much with Aliza because we touch a little bit on this. And she's like down to earth and kind and generous. And she's in alignment with service, which is really the best place to be with this work. So without further ado, Aliza Kelly is a renowned celebrity astrologer, author, columnist, and host of the podcast Horoscope Weekly. She writes a column in New York magazine's The Cut, maintains a robust online community, and is the author of 5 books, including her latest title, It's All Magic, out October 2024. Aliza has been featured in numerous publications, including the New York Times, and is a regular guest on The Drew Barrymore Show. Learn more about her at alizakelly.com. Aliza, welcome to Magic Hour. I am seriously so excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, Taylor. I really appreciate it.
Yes, you are somebody whose authenticity, deep rooted knowledge, and witchiness just speaks to me so deeply. So I'm so excited to get into this with you.
Awesome. I love it.
And the first question that we always ask our guests is, what is your big three?
I am a Leo sun, I'm a Capricorn rising, and a Pisces moon.
Ooh, nice. I love that. And then my second question is, how does your intuition speak to you?
That's a great question. My intuition speaks to me through my stillness, through my trust, through my creativity, through memories, through feelings in my body. I'm a Pisces moon, right? So like there's no shortage of it coming through. It changes depending on what it's communicating. But yeah, my intuition is definitely something that I have this really deep and intimate relationship with.
I love that so much. And I love to ask this question to our different guests because the answer is always different and it helps people see just how many ways our intuition can speak to us. And what really fascinated me about your answer was when you said memories, because that feels very tied to that kind of Capricorn rising energy of like tradition, ancestors, things like that. And when your intuition speaks in memories, how does that work for you?
So, for example, I'm very sensory oriented. I have a photographic memory, but part of the way that my brain collects memories is also through the way that something will smell, the way that something sounds, the way that light feels in certain seasons. So, tuning in when I feel connected to that sensation, when I'm really sort of in this sensory experience, I can recall another time or a time previously, perhaps even a time from a different lifetime that I've encountered those sensory experiences. And then there's a whole host of things that will come after that. Either it'll be sort of like indicating that there's healing around that, or it'll be a similar sort of excitement that's conjuring if it's recalling a time when really amazing things were happening. And then I'm having that experience again, then it'll speak through that. So yeah, it's like I look backwards, and I do this in my work in astrology as well, is that I often am looking backwards to get clues about what is happening in the present and understanding sort of what cycle we're on.
Yeah, that's so helpful, and that makes a lot of sense, and it just gives me chills, the interwoven fabric of, like, sensory energy, sensory images, memories, time, measuring time with the stars, different cycles, like, it all is so congruent in this beautiful way, and that's really cool. We've never heard that answer on the pod, where basically you have these sensory markers that attach you to a different time in your life or experience or memory, and they can stimulate going back into that energetic state for you. And that is a way that your guides bring your consciousness through different places, which also connects astrologically with the different cycles, the different times, and what the planets were doing through those things as well. Is that right?
Yes, yes, definitely. I mean, I think that astrology is the study of time. And understanding our place in time, understanding time as something that has a lot of malleability, that it is something that is flexible, that it is something that is all happening all at once, but also that we experience chronologically. I think that those spaces and thinking about what we can glean from the patterns that the planets are making, and then also just our bodies, our physical bodies, our lived experiences in our bodies, and the memories that we hold in our bodies, all of those pieces coming together is really a very magical recipe for me.
That's so special. I love that so much. And so, moving into 2025, which astrologers have been talking about for a long time, and there's so many outer planets changing signs and just so many big things happening. What are some of the main energetic themes that you see for this year's energy?
Revolution, upheaval, transformation, bravery, courage, hopefully unification. You caught me at a funny moment for this podcast because I had this I in the shower last night, I had these like horrible thoughts of, "Oh my god, what if my interpretations of astrology are like 180 opposite day?" Right? Like what if I'm saying that this is all going to yield this revolution that we have been waiting for, and that these wonderful things are going to be happening, not necessarily in the moment, not necessarily even in 2025, but just we're moving in this better direction. But what if we're moving in a horrible direction? What if it's the worst case scenario? And then again, I listen to my intuition here and really twofold. One, don't think that's true. When I'm not in an anxious state, because that was an anxious thought. When I really drop in and listen, I believe that the interpretation that we're moving towards progress is correct. And two, that we are also creating our experience here in our interpretations. So holding on to the hope and to the possibility that things are really moving in a way that is going to be ultimately for the greater good, for the collective, is 100% what we should be speaking with our words, considering with our actions, planning around, coordinating around, rallying around, and not losing hope and feeling like we're just moving backwards and that's that. That would be a self-fulfilling prophecy. I share this maybe to here today with your listeners who might feel hopeless or might feel like, is it really true that things are going to get better? And I can assure you that should we just keep our eye on the prize, it is. It really, really is.
Yeah, and I think having those thoughts like, wow, am I completely like projecting what I want to see onto the astrology is so healthy because that's the part of us that keeps us honest and questioning everything. And there's such a necessary function for that. So we don't float off into like fantasy land. So I think that's a really critical part of our brain and our process as intuitives is to stay tethered to earth. And then just like you said, being like, okay, when I actually tap into this, this is anxious, not intuitive, and I can move forward from that. And it's interesting because I also think as a practitioner in the spiritual space, akin to how self divination is one of the most difficult forms because we know ourselves, we're attached to outcomes, we look for confirmation of what we want to see, giving completely unbiased readings for society as a member of society is also very difficult because we want things to happen and we care and we're scared and we see what's happening and we're calling out what's wrong. And it's easy to get into this place where like astrology or psychic mediumship or something can sort of confirm our biases. And I think that's maybe what happened with a lot of like electional astrology is like people so badly wanted to see what they wanted to see with that. And so it's really interesting navigating these times as mystics and finding the practices of nervous system regulation because we are human and we have to feel the discomfort and we have to do the shadow work. And that will only make us a clearer vessel for truth to come through. But we're just human and these are scary times for us too. And I really resonate with your moment in the shower because I think it's very relatable. And we aren't up here just like floating on a cloud above it. But I think that's what gives us the right empathetic tone and leadership in the space to report on it instead of being disconnected from it. I also think that right now we're in these times where it's kind of like how the room gets messier before it gets cleaned. Like we have this vision of the clean room. We have this vision of unification in the age of Aquarius and revolution and humanitarianism. But I think what's happening right now is drawing to the surface all of the shadow and the evil that was hidden. It feels emboldened in this current moment. But the first step of healing the shadows and getting to that age of Aquarius is seeing it. So I think that it's doing what we asked it to do. It's like when you work with moldavite. I don't know if you've ever worked with moldavite, but it's this crystal that like when you work with it, things can go crazy. And it's like, whoa, this isn't what my fantasy was of change, but it's actually the really uncomfortable, ugly things that need to be dealt with so that we can get to that vision.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's such a great way of describing it. Certainly, I have to say, for years looking at 2025 astrology, and each year I do an astrology of the year ahead, and I'd be like, when we get to 2025, we'll talk about it. When we get to 2025, we'll talk about it. And then finally we're here, and I'm like, oh my God, we are here in 2025. It never looked like it was gonna be normal, you know what I mean? Like, it never looked like it was gonna be like, and then everything was good. Obviously, the chaos that we're experiencing now is embedded into this massive societal healing for humanity at large. And this timing, I believe that we're all here for a reason in this time because we are all equipped and ready to be here. All of us have skills and specific ways of thinking and receiving information and helping and participating that make us perfect for these conditions. And even if it feels hard, of course things feel hard. That's what growth is. I just came from the gym and am doing strength training and it was really hard and good, like it was supposed to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Literally me like trembling down the stairs when I try to lift weights or do squats.
Yeah, 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 and then you're shaky, and I was like, "Whoa," I'm feeling, like, all dizzy and weird, and this is a very small microcosmic example of the big changes, the strength that we're building on a societal level. We are getting stronger, and not just stronger to harden us, stronger to help us really make the transformation that is going to make a big difference for all of us in our lifetime and many lifetimes to come.
Yeah, absolutely. And anything worth having takes bravery. Anything worth having takes bravery. And I think these Neptune moving into Aries and this sort of Aries energy coming up, Saturn moving into Aries, it's like teaching us those lessons. Like anything worthwhile requires bravery. And I think that what we create collectively will be in direct proportion to our consciousness. And if we can all connect with bravery and healing and love, that's what the rebirth of the United States of America will be. But if we are hiding and staying small and listening to our witch wound and letting hate overrun us and make us feel like we have to hide, that will inform the rebirth of what everything looks like. So it's been a really interesting time to confront that.
Yes, yes. And I do think that holding the optimism and the hope and the potential and really creating something that is in our best image is going to be a big part of the equation. So it's okay to feel afraid and it's okay to feel nervous and anxious and have thoughts like I did in the shower. And then it's also good to sort of, get your feet back on the ground and check in with your heart space and reconnect and be like, no, 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 I can do this. I am capable and I'm here for a reason and I'm strategic and I'm not alone. And there's lots and lots of other people who are afraid too. And that means that we can all come together and figure out new solutions. And everyone has a different skill set that they can offer. And that's just so beautiful. So, yes, going back to the astrology, Neptune moving into Aries, Saturn moving into Aries, Jupiter moving into Cancer. Lord, like that is our saving grace of 2025. Uranus moving into Gemini, new eclipse series. We're finishing out our Mars retrograde at the time of this recording, Venus retrograde in March. And yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot in a 12-month period. What I have been sharing with my community is like astrology doesn't know we're calling this 2025. It's just so happens that we Gregorian calendar, a 12-month interval, this rotation of the sun, we call it a year. But it just so happens that the astrology is just saying, okay, here's this and this and this and this and this back to back. And it just so happens to fall within what we are calling 2025. But these changes, whether we call them 2025 or we just call them these necessary resettings, these necessary shifts or big cosmic changes that are happening in the solar system, like it's all happening this year and into next year too, into 2026.
Yeah, a lot of the planets are dipping into a preview of what it will be like and then going back, just like, Pluto and Capricorn and Aquarius back to
Yeah.
Capricorn, back to Aquarius did. It's like this kind of preview energy. And a message that I was getting from the last few years is like 2020 to 2024 was strengthening our toolbox and shaping us and transforming us so we would be ready for 2025 and 2026. And I really like what you said about all of us having our different skills and our different ways of showing up. I don't know if you're familiar with Sarah Lyons.
Love Sarah Lyons. She's my Leo, New York girly. We go way back. I adore her.
Amazing. I had a feeling you guys would know each other because I get similar energy from you guys. And she was a guest on season 1, and we were talking about how it's such a destructive time. And with that destructive time, you meet it with creation. And I think as Leos, you guys are such leaders in that way. And like posting is not creative, complaining is not creative. It's not that those things don't have a function, but like we all have our unique skill sets. And instead of getting sucked into the void of negativity, we have to see how we can help our community as a generative act, as a creative act. So the astrology, helping people have forecasts and meeting people where they're at with hope and things to think about. But maybe you're a baker and you bake cookies for people who are protesting and marching, or there's like different things. Like me in particular, I can't really be in crowds. I'm super highly energetic sensitive. Like marching wouldn't work for me, but I might be doing witchcraft on the side or doing protection rituals for the protesters. I might be donating. I might be creating a podcast to bring guests on to help people. It's like we all have to figure out like what our voice in the space and what our creative act can be. And so as an astrologer who is helping us navigate such intense times, like how do you feel like astrologers and mystics in the space can really be helpful at this time? Because I think people are also trying to find what's the right tone. How do I actually become of service instead of just look at me, I got something right, but it's like no, I want to be of service. There's been some icky energy I've observed in the space, and I really appreciate your tone and your voice in this space. So like how can astrologers actually be helpful and meet the call to creation and service?
I think that we have to just call out the elephant in the room, which is utilizing this work for likes and follows and subscribes. It's easier than ever to make a clickbait headline post it on a video and watch people participate and consume the content because it scares them. You know what I mean? Of course, if you have a video where you're like, this is what you need to know about 5 disasters I'm predicting in 2025, like people are scared. And even if they're not scared, suddenly they are scared because they just saw a headline like that and they're going to be like, oh no, I have to watch this. So I think that if we are talking about individuals who are creating content on that frequency, like I don't even know if this is if my words would reach them. Like they're not helping. Period. They're not here to help. They're here to try to aggregate as much like visibility as possible. I don't even want to say influence because what that's not real influence anyway. It's really just these websites that are clickbait websites that live on ads. Like that just it's like, why am I suddenly scrolling through this and like looking at all these random pictures and it's just like ad farming? So, if for individuals who are utilizing the metaphysical space exclusively for that purpose, that's a very low frequency. It's a very low vibration. And it simply is not going, it's not going to stand, it's not going to last the test of time, period. For those who are trying to figure out how to show up online, and to still advise on what's going on and the tumultuous nature of this moment and how to address it, but how not to make people afraid. I would say, I mean, what I do in my practice is I just want to encourage people to reconnect with their truth themselves. Because ultimately, that is at the end of the day, all we have is just knowing who we are and trusting that we are here for a reason and really saying, okay, then let me go deeper in figuring out how I can be the best version of myself. Relate it back to the individual rather than to these variables that are so out of our control. And that's not to say that I don't make posts and videos about what's going on in the world, because I'm also a curious person. And I look at charts to see what's Luigi Mangioni's chart look like. What's his rising sign? I mean, that's fascinating and interesting to me. And I do think it does speak to the broader collective experience and we can glean from it. But the ethics are always on the edge. And I think you have to be really careful and sensitive about what crosses the line. And it's something that might be ineffable. That line is sometimes a little hard to read exactly. But to me, there is a clear distinction, there is a line. And I think that most practitioners can feel the difference.
Yeah, and I think that line is so based on intention as well. Like, is your intention ego based or service based? And your listeners will hear that. Like, you might be reporting astrologically on the same thing as another creator, but one creator is based in fear and sensationalism and clicks, and one is based on actual understanding and digging deep because the things happening are extremely interesting. And I do want to hear the astrological perspective. And so I think that intention is really clear. And I just couldn't agree more with what you were saying. And like, it's no different than fear based religion when astrology skews to that place. It's like controlling people through fear. And sadly, people who gravitate towards spirituality can sometimes be people who have gone through really tough shit in their life. So they're in a more vulnerable space to be latched on by those fear based systems. So the ethics are like so important as a spiritual practitioner to be based in like solution oriented thinking, empowerment, and service. So yeah, I really appreciate how you said that. And I think also this like Saturn and Pisces era is like teaching us such boundaries and discernment with spiritual information that we consume. Not all spiritual content is created equal because some people are based in ego, not service. And so if you are getting, it's sort of like how media strategies at this moment are designed to keep us overwhelmed and fatigued and exhausted and confused. And I think a lot of astrologers are contributing to that and doing the almost unintentionally or intentionally doing the bidding of the current political scheming where it's like adding to that chaos and confusion and sense of despair. And it's almost like that's creating a group manifestation because we can manifest what we truly believe. And if we truly believe the world's going to end, that's what they almost want us to believe so that we burn out.
So Chicken Little. It's literally the story of like the sky is falling, the sky is falling. Tale as old as time too. Boring, boring. Try another take." Like, try looking at the astrology from a different point of view. Instead of just doom and gloom, try to innovate in the way that you can interpret it so that you're actually adding to the conversation, as you're saying, rather than just like piling on to the chaos.
Yeah, and kind of how we were saying, like, astrology can be a projection based off of our goodness, where we're like, we see unity and hope and rebirth. Like, sometimes astrology content can be a projection of the unhealed shadow inside somebody, and they can be creating from that sort of unhealed place. And so, spiritual discernment and boundaries as we go through times of unknown, like, you do not have to interact with content that doesn't make you feel good in the spiritual spaces.
Yes, that's beautifully said.
Thank you. So, going into like breaking down 2025 a little bit. So, March 30th, Neptune moves into Aries. What are some like key themes there that people can be ready for?
As I mentioned at the top of this episode, I'm really into looking backwards in order to figure out what forward motion is going to be. And Neptune moved into Pisces in 2011. So it's been 14 years of Neptune in Pisces. So I would definitely encourage each listener to think about really like this chapter of their life. What were the main takeaways from this period? And don't overthink it. Just see what rises to the top. If you were to summarize these 14 years, what are the sort of like the core themes? On a societal level, something that I'm really compelled by is that it was in 2011 that Instagram came out, and it was in 2011, it was just a few months after, early into 2012, that Facebook bought Instagram. And to me, this is really fascinating because one of my big predictions of 2025 is gonna be massive social media change. And I think we're seeing it, period. We're seeing it in real time. But recognizing that everything about the past 14 years and the rise of social media becoming not just a pastime, but our dominant connection in life is going to be under review now. And humans, believe it or not, are older and more ancient than social media is. And I think if one thing has to go, it's going to be social media over human beings. But what does it look like when we've all become addicted, which is another very Piscean concept, to this fantasy, to these illusions, to these digital connections, to this facade, to influencer culture, to doom scrolling, and all of this that has really pulled us into a very warped state of mind. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens when Neptune in Aries wakes up, because that's the energy. It's we're here. Hello. We're alive. Where are we going? What are we doing? What's happening next? And Aries is, of course, the first sign of the zodiac. It's a fire sign. It's impulsive. It's initiative. It's determined. And Pisces is very much like the field of poppies in Wizard of Oz. Neptune and Aries is like a slap in the face and water. And it's like, we got to go. So have we all been in a trance for 14 years? Yes, we have.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. I could literally listen to you talk about that forever. It's so, so interesting and how social media, like to the 2011 into 2012, Instagram, like all of that is so, so interesting. What I really hope for Neptune and Aries is that we start to act on our spiritual principles. If the last 14 years have been this kind of like fever dream trance where we're just like running through poppy fields and dreaming, I really hope that like slap to the face and wake up call and dousing water on us that you're describing is like, okay, all of this information isn't just existing on my yoga mat. Like, how can I actually move it into the real world, pioneer, push forward, and integrate my higher spiritual self with my actions?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. It actually just made me think of when you were describing that. I gave birth to my daughter in December 2023. And during that labor process, it was the first time I was aware that I was actually using yoga in real life.
Hmm.
And not the moves. Well, I wasn't
Yeah.
that fancy, but the breathing, the trust, the flow of it, like really leaning into the undulation in the contractions And it was the first time that I was ever able to think, oh, this is applied. This is really genuinely applied. And then her arrival is Aries, right? That's the Aries energy
Mm.
of beginning again. So it's almost like this process of, yes, as we apply the knowing and as we actually put it into use, are going to see results. We're going to see things happen that even if we thought we had been seeing things over the past 14 years, like it's going to feel more tangible now. It's going to be different. It's gonna be something that we can actually, like, point to and be like, "Oh, yeah, this is it. This is the thing."
Yeah, and that example is such a powerful story because we literally are in the birth canal of the zodiac, like Pisces into Aries, and so it is a powerful rebirth moment, but that's not just some esoteric concept floating on a cloud, like, what is the actual tangible result? And for you, that was your beautiful daughter that came out.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I love that. And so Saturn is also moving into Aries on May 24th. So, yeah, I think that's also contributing to this feeling of wake up, honey, like no more floating through the ethers.
No more. Yeah, I mean, Saturn doesn't love to be in Aries. It's like we have a pro and con list of the year. Saturn doesn't love to be in Aries because Aries is so about the singular experience, and Saturn is exalted in Libra. Why would Saturn be exalted in Libra? Aries opposite is because that's committing to partnership. It's committing to contracts. It's committing to the initiation of something, right? Like we're both in this together. Let's sign on the dotted line. Saturn in Aries is like, what's my benefit? How is this going to help me? So Saturn in Aries is a little prickly energetically because it's trying to commit to what is in each individual's best interest. Now, I think that the workaround here is recognizing that what is in every individual's best interest is also what is in the best interest of every individual. You know what I mean? We are all connected and we are all in this together. So we all benefit from each other benefiting. So I think if we can frame it in such a way that allows for not this like rugged individualism, as they call it, but as something that is truly about, sure, let's reframe the revolution as one where, like, oh, you want prosperity and abundance? Great. This is going to help you. Like I think that's the messaging of it.
Yeah, it's kind of like there can be no power to the people unless the people are in their power. And what was coming up too is that I feel like our society has gotten too used to instant gratification. And I think Saturn and Aries might teach us lessons around that because Aries, and as an Aries rising, I'm so guilty of this. Like my whole chart is almost fire. I'm like, I want it yesterday, honey. I think Saturn and Aries is like, no, you need to slow down. You need to plan. You need to not take shortcuts and be impulsive. And I think things in our society have felt so cheap lately. It's like, I take a weekend course, I'm a freaking master healer. It's like, no, 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 that is not it. Like, people devote their entire lifetimes to the mysteries of spiritual work. Everything feels so digestible and fast and not rooted in real mastery or substance. And I hope Saturn and Aries helps with that.
Yes, something I always say is you cannot Amazon Prime your spirituality. There's no shortcut here. You're in, you go, you come back up, you go back in. 2025 is also the hermit year. So that is something to keep in mind too, is that this is a year of, and it's a 9 year. It's the last year in numerology before we reset again. So it is a year of like karmic completion. We have the access to these powerful spiritual truths and breakthroughs. Should we be willing to take our time, as you're saying, and learn those Saturnian lessons of like actually slowing down?
Yes, and you cannot Amazon Prime your spirituality will be a quote from this episode. So thank you so much from that because I love that. I love that. And yeah, I think like your philosophy of tank, there are no coincidences. I think the synchronicity is so beautiful how it is a 9-year because we are in this birth canal consideration of the zodiac of like Pisces moving into Aries, then moving back into Pisces, and then in the 1 year being firmly planted in Aries. So it's just so cool, like in the witchy world, how, correspondences and things like that, how it always flows together. And even just the nodes of fate moving into Pisces and Virgo on 111, I was like, got it, universe. Like there are no accidents or coincidences.
Yeah, I love it. I'm very excited about the North Node in Pisces. I think that that's really beautiful. I think that, that's the thing with 2025 is that we have a lot of harsh ingresses, and that's undeniable. But we also have a lot of these like little helpers. North Node in Pisces, Jupiter moving into Cancer into its exaltation. That is so exciting. I'm a little bit extra excited because it is my Jupiter, so I'm like, yeah, this is gonna be my Jupiter return here. But just in general, it's gonna be such a nice, very much a change in pace from Jupiter and Gemini, which has been stinky, to say the least.
And so Jupiter will move into Cancer on June 9th. I'm really hoping that this might lead to a win for like mothers' rights, women's rights, reproductive rights. I really hope that. But can you tell us a little bit about what excites you about Jupiter and Cancer?
Sure. So, Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. Jupiter is in its happiest, most abundant, most prosperous place in this sign. And what I think is really most compelling to me about it is that Cancer is associated with the mother, women, the moon, our intuition, our sensitivities, our flow. And Jupiter is like the majority of planets in astrology is male coded, right? Astrology is typically in traditional astrology, it's very binary. There's not a lot of female representation. So Jupiter is a dude. Jupiter is Zeus. Jupiter has that machismo to him, but he's exalted in Cancer, which is a sign that is associated with all of these female and femme keywords and qualities. And Jupiter is exalted in Cancer because Jupiter is pregnant in Cancer. And to me, it is cool and gender bending and really sort of like it's the only time that we see this in the zodiac and in the traditional. When we talk about exaltations, we're talking about the dignities of the different planets. And this is the only time that we see a quote unquote male planet exalted at its best in this very female skewing zodiac sign. And I think that this idea of how do we feminize, a femininomenon, the world here is really exciting and compelling and has obviously for where we are societally right now, a lot of really incredible implications. It really is going to slow things down in a way that gives us time to catch up. And I think that Jupiter in Gemini has been very destructive as we knew it would be. Jupiter is also not happy in Gemini. It's considered to be in its detriment. And it has done its job and will continue to do its job of making a mountain out of a molehill and taking all the headlines and blowing them out of proportion and misinformation and just like the manipulative aspects of it, skewing things around. And we're going from that to a place that Jupiter that relishes being. And I think that it's going to be such a notable change of pace and such a shift in the way that we receive information, the way that we connect together. I really, we're talking about community, community, community. And there is the air sign community, and then there is the water sign community. And water sign community is really showing up. It's not just thinking about it, it's being there. And I'm really very excited. Very excited.
I love that. And I love how you said 2025 does have a lot of kind of tense ingresses, but there's also these helpers forces. And I think the helper forces are what we can also personally try to attune our energy to be in flow with the most harmonious parts of the year's energy.
Yes. Yes. And it's important to hold this is not just Jupiter doing anything. This is Jupiter going into the best place it could possibly go. So this is like a tremendously positive ingress that's happening.
That's amazing, and my husband is almost like all Cancer energy, so I'm really excited for him.
I love it. That's amazing.
Yeah, it works with my Scorpio sun. And so before we get into eclipse season, I just want to speak a little bit about Uranus moving into Gemini, which again, there are no coincidences on 7/7.
Cool. Yeah. So Uranus is moving into Gemini. Uranus has been in Taurus since 2018. This has been a literal one. Taurus is associated with the economy, Taurus is associated with food, Taurus is associated with our physical health, our physical environment and landscape. And, I don't have to spell it out. All of these things have gone through the Uranian revolution, unexpected, shocking things nonstop since 2018. It's been exhausting. And Uranus is going into Gemini, which is Uranus is happier in Gemini than it has been in Taurus because Uranus is it's about ideas and progress, and it's futuristic, and it wants to change the world. And it likes Gemini's like insatiable curiosity. It likes the fact that Gemini is all about collecting data and information. Now, certainly, I think it's going to be interesting to see what technology does with Uranus and Gemini, because this is very technological. It's very much about networks and resources and communication and information. Now, that's an interesting pairing with the changes that we're going to be anticipating in social media. I'm not sure how that's going to all land, but it's definitely, there's a lot of pressure points on technology this year. And then Uranus is going to stay in Gemini. It's going to go back and forth for a minute, but it's going to stay there for the next 7 years. It's a 7-year long transit. So we're going to get really familiar with what it means to be on this speed and on this pace. And it's going to be a lot faster. I mean, the attention is definitely going to shift away from the agricultural considerations and more into sort of technology, medicine. I'm really excited about the potentials for breakthroughs in health and medicine that can happen here. I think that it's like I will put money on a cure for cancer. I really think that massive change can happen so long as the infrastructure is there to support scientists, and medical professionals doing this work. But I think that there's really like big breakthroughs that are going to be happening. And that's really exciting to think about.
That gives me so much hope, and I'm so glad that you said that. Cancer is such a tough topic in the hummingbird community, our podcast community. My mom and my father-in-law both passed of cancer. A lot of people write in with questions about that. So the idea of that happening in our lifetime, and not even in our lifetime, but these next 7 years with Uranus and Gemini, is like so hopeful and so inspirational. And I just like am an angel number girly, and it moving in on 7/7, it's a 7-year cycle, but also it goes back permanently on November 7th into Aries. So I'm like, that's so fun.
Yeah, I love it. That's amazing.
Yeah. And I hope that also maybe Uranus and Gemini might activate some sort of grassroots operation, might connect people in a way, person to person, social connection to social connection, in a way that mobilizes change and humanitarian aid. It goes with that theme we're talking about of like enough talking about it and more actual connections in the real world and moving forward in a creative way.
I have another 7 for you, by the way, though.
Okay.
I was like making sure before I said it, but it's Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. Oh no. Oh, Earth. Uranus is the 7th planet.
Woo! Thank you so much for that. I love that. So, this episode is going to come out March 12th. And I know eclipse season starts March 14th. So, I was like, that's perfect. We have the full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo. So, I'm wondering if before we get into the full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo, we can talk a little bit about the energetics of eclipse season, how to best move forward with it, and then anything that you want to share about that Virgo eclipse.
Okay, so eclipse season T is that the main thing to know from my point of view is that this is the only time that I pause my manifestation practice. I have a robust manifestation practice For every new moon, every full moon, I fear nothing. I fear no square. I fear no Pluto. I fear no Neptune. I think all of it is juicy, delicious. The only time that I take a break is during eclipse season. It's about a month off from magical practices. And the reason is because during eclipse season, the nodes of destiny are participating. They're actually running the show. They're the ones that are generating eclipses because eclipses are a phenomenon that occurs when the sun, moon, and earth all sync up at the same points in the sky. And thus, these nodal points, which is the highest bound and the lowest bound of the moon's own orbital motion, are activated. The moon is at those points. So, because those points of destiny, of fate, of these powerful karmic principles are engaged, we mere mortals, we little humans, are best when we take a step back and really step into a very devotional space, surrender, of trust, of observation, because it is during eclipse season, during lunar eclipses and solar eclipses, that big, big changes and adjustments are taking place in the universe. I find eclipse season to be like a profoundly spiritual and devotional time. Often there's a lot of big change that happens. I will say that I really relish eclipse season. I look forward to it. Oftentimes I'm like, all right, it's getting close. We got to get the eclipse going soon. I need a little more action. I need a little more storyline. I need something to happen that like spices things up. And that's what eclipse season does. Lots of beginnings, lots of endings, lots of change, not just during the eclipses, but within the entire window of it. Things that are transpiring during the eclipses aren't necessarily going to happen within that month, but the universe is shifting and creating those opportunities and also moving us away from things that are not serving us.
Yes. And I so agree with you about pausing the manifestation process during eclipse season because eclipses are so chaotic and it's not necessarily what we want during eclipse season sometimes, but on a soul level, in some way, it's what we need. And I think the manifestation process can be tied to what we think that we want and what we're calling in. And sometimes we can get so specific about that. But eclipse season leaves it open to something bigger than we can see right now or planning for ourselves. It's like kind of, I see it as like a shaking of the etch a sketch energetically, where it's like, okay, it's time for things to move around. And my mom was an astrologer. She taught me that like during eclipse season, it's like the drawbridge comes down and like things come in, things go out, and the drawbridge goes back. And there's almost this permanence to the energy. Like when things happen during eclipse season, it's like they're meant to either be gone or in your life, but not this like gray, murky area in between. And actually, Magic Hour is an eclipse baby. We launched it on March 27th, the Libra eclipse.
Oh, cool. I'm also an eclipse baby, so I love eclipse babies. Yes, I'm all for it. We love it's eclipse energy is very it's big, it's dramatic, it's feast or famine. It's a very powerful energy to work with, and it's also a lot about it's really a lot about surrender.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, what are things that people can keep in mind thematically for the Virgo full moon eclipse?
So, we're thinking about a lunar eclipse occurs on a full moon. And full moons are intrinsically about opposites. The sun and the moon are almost combative during a full moon because usually it's just the sun who's like, hello, look at me. I'm here. I'm gorgeous. I'm consistent. And the moon is like, goes through its cycle where it's like, don't look at me. I don't want to be seen. I don't want to be known. I'm so demure. Like, I'm just in the shadows. And then during a full moon, it's like, actually, bitch, I'm here. I'm just as big as the sun, which is a phenomenon I will never get over that the perceived size of the sun is the same as the perceived size of the moon. Like it's so mind-boggling to me. I can't even deal with it. Suffice it to say, we have two luminaries that are really facing off in the sky. And the sun says, I'm right. And the moon says, I'm right. And neither are fully right. They both need each other. They need the conversation in order to find the harmony and the synthesis. Now, this is going to be a lunar eclipse that works with the south node. We have to call upon the south node in this because the south node is in Virgo. So, for this first eclipse of 2025, it's going to be It's going to be a lot about letting go. It's going to be a lot about releasing. It's going to be a lot about seeing what isn't working, what systems, very Virgo, what systems are not functioning properly, that are actually deterring us from being able to live the healthiest, most productive, most affirming lives that we need. And when I say it's about letting go, again, we are not letting go. I am not going to be doing any release rituals, no papers being burned, nothing's being scattered. I am not forcing what needs to be let go of. I am going to watch and observe what needs to be let go of because the universe is going to tell me things and illuminate things that are not in my vision, that I have no awareness of. And that's part of the surrender of it. And Virgo and Pisces on their own are so spiritual and so devotional and so magical. So I imagine that this is going to be an incredible time of just big breakthroughs and spiritual downloads and lots of discovery and lots of intuition, lots of big feelings, crying, releases. Like, I can't wait for it. It's gonna be like a spa for our soul.
I love that. And I love when you said, I'm not going to be the one telling the universe what I'm letting go. The universe is going to tell me what needs to be let go. And I think that perfectly encapsulates the intention of an eclipse season or how to best navigate it, where it's like, it's not our job really to do anything. It's more our job to flow with what's coming up, like not force, but flow, allow. And so it's our job to just be open, reflective, contemplative, and create sacred space for that to come through, not to try to push or force or make things happen. I love that. And then March 29th, we have the new moon solar eclipse in Aries. So could you just tell us a little bit about the themes there?
So this is the last solar eclipse on the Aries and Libra axis, a story that began in 2023, right next to the vernal equinox. So actually March 2023. And it was, eclipses travel in these 2.5 year cycles. So this is the conclusion of that storyline. We're wrapping this up right now. This is the end of that journey for us of something that started in 2023. So certainly what I'm going to be inviting for this solar eclipse is to go through all of the dates of the eclipses and to think about what was happening in your life during these times. What were the primary lessons? What have you learned? And this last eclipse is definitely going to be it's the conclusion. It's the last chapter. Now, we've all read a book. We know that sometimes last chapters are the best ones. Sometimes we're waiting for the last chapter. So especially if this journey of Aries and Libra that started in 2023 has left a little bit to be desired, don't write this last one off because that last chapter could be exactly what you needed to define the story for you.
Yes, I love that. And the last chapters truly are the best. We always want to skip to them, but we won't understand them if we skip to them.
Yes,
It's like all of the hard work, all of the growth that we've been doing. It's like that last chapter is the payoff for taking the journey and going through it. So I love that so much. And it leans even more to the birth canal theme that we've been hitting on a lot of Pisces into Aries. And then now karmic endings, karmic new chapters. It's like without the ending, there can't be the beginning. So I feel like a lot of people right now are in like these crossroads moments, and we always are in some capacity, but the stars are just like giving us so many exclamation points around it this year.
totally.
This conversation has been so amazing. Thank you so, so much for coming on. Where can everybody find you, connect with you, work with you, all the things?
I'm everywhere at Aliza Kelly, ALIZA KELLY. And then I have a community called the Constellation Club, which is the space where I host coven meetings every new moon and full moon, tons of workshops, tons of people from all around the world chatting 24/7. Really an amazing space. I also am the host of a weekly podcast called Horoscope Weekly, which new episodes come out every Monday for that. And yeah, I'm around. I'm too online, so I'm available.
Chronically online.
Chronically online.
I just wanted to say before we like final wrap up that I feel what you're talking about with social media going through a big change and upcoming with that. And it's been so freeing for me to have a podcast. Like, I feel like long form content in the spiritual spaces is resonating with me a lot more than short form attention grabbers. It's not that those can't be interesting and informative and useful, but I'm just really enjoying the podcast space.
Well, you are an amazing podcast host.
Oh, thank
You are
you.
so gifted, incredibly gifted.
Oh, okay. Now I'm going to go cry.
You really are. You are an amazing interviewer. You are so smart and so well spoken and so dynamic.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. I appreciate that so much. And I look up to you so much in this space. So just thank you so much for everything.
Thank you, Taylor.
Welcome back to Sitting with Spirit, the part of the podcast where I sit with our angels, our guides, our loved ones in spirit, and give the messages for the collective. Take what resonates with you, take what feels like a yes in your heart space, and leave the rest. So, starting off, as always, with the angel messages. As I started to tune into the energy of the collective, I immediately, which this is very common, felt blocks in the throat and the crown chakras. And when I was tuning into the block of the throat chakra, the best way I could explain it was like this consciousness covered in quicksand. And it just felt like we kept feeling heavy and sunken under. And it's almost this interesting feeling where this deep down higher self observer voice is like, this isn't working for us. We know that our thoughts are going to dark places. We know we have to do things to support ourselves. But then this quicksand feeling feels like it's like sucking us under into this place of despair or disillusionment or frustration or confusion and dread. And so the message that I got here was that we have to use music to shift our frequency. It feels like giving it more thought in terms of cerebralizing things or trying to make sense of it or logic or reason things out feels like it just sucks us deeper into that quicksand feeling with our thoughts. I feel this is definitely tied to social media. This is definitely tied to our collective consciousness right now. But there's just this feeling of getting sucked in and sucked under. And I just got this message of working with music to shift. And that's what felt like it would dispel that quicksand energy, is this sense of music as a frequency raiser. And then with that, there was also this throat constriction. The throat chakra also felt this really just a hard time connecting with our truth, speaking our truth. Everything just gave me this like constricted feeling. And these are the two energy centers that are most commonly blocked in my personal practice and in the collective when I tune in. It makes a lot of sense why we're feeling like a crown chakra block. Of course, I'm recording this like a month before it will come out, but I feel like with the throat constriction, so the crown chakra needs music and the throat chakra to open needs community and needs people that it can sort of share and blend with and be heard in. So music and community are two forces that are here to like be in our toolbox and open us up and help us. That being said, when I was tuning into the energy of this week, there's a juxtaposition between two very different energetic forces. And the one is that sort of confusion, existential dread, heaviness, sort of bleakness, and that quicksand energy and that constricted energy and that fearful energy. But then I also felt the presence of our angels stepping in. And I saw this warm, golden, angelic light. And I just felt like this phoenix energy of the old ashes shedding, the new being reborn, and of such support. And another key word is activation. I feel like our angels and guides are stepping in really close. And they're not just stepping in close to be this like ineffable concept of support. They're stepping in to activate us and push us into aligned action. Like it's time to move forward. And I felt the fire energy, the fire element energy connected to that. And I felt this warmth. I felt this passion. I felt this power behind that. And so I think if you're in a place where you're feeling really constricted and confused and in that quicksand type of energy, meditate with this angelic golden firelight around you. Just imagine that warm light of golden angelic energy just blanketing you from the top of your head down to your feet and back up. And picture that fire element and allow it to activate you and motivate you and push you forward with aligned action in alignment with your heart and your higher self. With that being said, I was also seeing my symbol of books and writing and learning. And I feel like right now is this moment as well to like follow your curiosity, to learn more about what interests you, as well as on the flip side of that, writing and sharing your voice in a really unique, authentic way. And then I actually felt called to pull 2 tarot cards, which I don't usually do for sitting with spirit. But of course, I pulled the King of Wands, which is the king of the fire element. And this is such a fire element. Like the fire element feels like the solution right now. It feels like the heaviness and everything is tied to more of that constricted, limited, boundaried, like status quo energy. And the fire element feels fresh and new and brave and passionate. And like it wants to push us forward into this rebirth. And so the King of Wands is basically here to be like, lead by example, follow your passion, step into holding your life to a higher standard for yourself and creating action steps to grow that and build that and promote that. I do feel like the King of Wands is also really tied to a collective up level energy that I'm feeling, where it's like we just cannot accept things that we used to historically accept anymore. And we just have to like step up in this very integrous fire element way. And I feel like the fire element is also very tied to this idea of chivalry. I feel like the fire element has a strong moral code. That's why it can get very fiery and reared up when things are not living in alignment with that code. And that's a beautiful part of the fire energy. People that I know with a lot of fire in their chart, they do have just this purity as well and this simplicity in their moral code. And so I get this feeling that like that chivalry, honor system, that sense of fire and creativity and passion and motivation and energy, that's all part of it. But then the king element of this card is like taking it to a higher standard, expecting higher, and being in your leadership within that fire element. And then I also pulled the Knight of Cups, which is the like messenger card for the water element. So it's a really interesting synchronicity here with the water and fire because we're going through this birth canal of Pisces into Aries, and a lot of planets are doing that dance this year. And that's what it feels like. Like the water element is okay. The Knight of Cups is bringing new opportunity. It's bringing spirituality. It's bringing flow. Water is very tied to like release and feeling your feelings and shedding so that there's room for that fire to burst forward and initiate new things. And so this kind of back and forth between the water element and the fire element is coming up very strongly, which is very interesting because that's mostly me, water and fire in my birth chart. So I look forward to seeing what's happening this week when it comes out. And so the Knight of Cups is asking us to dive into the unknown, to go on new journeys, to follow our daydreams, our GPS of our heart space, and where our emotions are taking us. And the two feel like they're working together in tandem. And so there might be like new opportunities this week. There might be areas for making your life more romantic, living in this main character energy, like just more space for love and spirituality and that dreamy creative energy. Those are really the two like sort of forward momentums. When I feel into that quicksand crown chakra energy, it's trying to keep us stuck and blocked and in the same old limiting beliefs. And this Knight of Cups and this King of Wands are the energy that's like, no, no, no. We're moving forward, we're flowing, and we're trying new energetic strategies while we're at it that hold our lives to higher standards. And so, with that being said, I want to move into the mediumship connection. I had a young lady in spirit come to me. She felt like a sister energy. So she would have been somebody who was either a sister or like a sister. And she was showing me like a passion for the water, a passion for being on the water. I saw a longboard, like surfboard. I was seeing boats. And I got an MA name with her, like Martha or Mary or Margaret, something MA was coming through. And I got that she grew up on kind of like a rural farm type of area, but moved closer to the water because she was obsessed with the water. And when I felt into her, her personality was very calm, very grounded, very chill. And it just seemed like she was pretty simple and being happy with where she was, just being with the water, being in nature. Like she seemed like she had a really happy life and was happy with the simple things while she was here. I also felt with her that she would have been like in her 20s when she passed. I was seeing a clada ring, which was interesting. And then she was also showing me that she was with a brown dog in the spirit world. And then I was also seeing, as I was tapping into her, I was feeling this pain on the left side of my head. She was really highlighting that. And I felt like a lot of pain in my head. And so her main message is not living your life for other people, because I feel like her family kind of expected her to like stay at home, like take over the family business, live the life that was set out for her. And a big part of what made her soul happy was to move to a land that lit her up. And that leads to the second part of her message, which is moving where your heart feels alive. And I almost feel like there's this sense of her soul coming into this family that's asking her to be okay with just a mediocre existence by her standards, because her family was happy in the farm and not by the ocean, but that wasn't fulfilling for her. And I feel like sometimes our soul incarnates into these opportunities where the people around us are not seeing life the same way we see it or holding their life to the same standard we hold our lives to. And it's like, okay, are you really going to shake things up? Is it really that bad? But it's not even about it being that bad. It's that it could be amazing. And so there's also a message here. I feel like some people in the collective are thinking about moving and going places that light them up, going to different terrains that call to their soul, going closer to nature. This spirit is like, do it and don't wait. And she passed young, and she's so happy that she didn't wait to live a life that lit her up. She was giving me this feeling of when it was my time to pass, I had no regrets. And that was such a beautiful feeling for her because she loved her life and she was living in a way that was authentic to her. And the third part of her message is how healing nature is in this time. Like she was showing me just how the ocean and being in the ocean all the time was like the best medicine for her. And that in this time where things feel bleak and chaotic and disconnected, that we have to get back into the healing forces of nature.
Yes. I was literally thinking as you were saying that, I was like, man, I gotta go connect with nature. And you just said, you were like, nature is. So I'm really feeling that deeply. And that is just always such a powerful source of connection. Something you said at the beginning really resonated with me too about music and community. And you and I shared this beautiful experience over my birthday where we came together with our community and we just danced for hours. And it was so joyful and magical to be with each other with music and moving our bodies. I cannot recommend that enough. And now, one of my friends who was there has literally alone then has just been choosing a song and every night, just or every day, I don't know when he does it, just dancing fully with abandon to that song. And so, I think that's like a little something magical we can add into our life is like music, movement, community. It's so important.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I just have to say, too, with this person in spirit, whoever this is for, which, by the way, if you're new to the podcast, you might get what's called postcards, meaning similarities with your past loved one in spirit, which is for sure a little wink and a nod from them that they're tacking on some evidence that you could understand and that they're with you. But I felt like there would have been some sort of inside joke about seagulls with her. So I just had to share that in case it makes sense to whoever this is for. I feel like there was something like because she kept showing me seagulls and it made me feel like I wanted to laugh. And I felt like there was some sort of inside joke with it. And I also have to say that one of her main signs is hummingbirds, which I really love too.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Well, it's no accident then that she came through to you with her message.
I know. And that it was for the hummingbird community too. Like Go where your heart is lit up. Don't try to make something that isn't your dream fit. And that goes into that playing judge and jury in our head over what our heart is asking for. And I know that this year, Jupiter moves into Cancer, which is like expansion when it comes to our home and our inner world. And so I think dare to dream big. And I feel like there might be a lot of relocations and people dreaming about that.
Yeah, it's like, why put a limitation on our dreams? Why say that they need to be practical? We don't know what's possible. And when we open up to the possibilities being endless, we allow so much magic to come into our life. Like, we just don't know what's around the corner. So don't limit your dreams. Dream big and expect so many possibilities.
Yeah. And when I tap into people in the spirit world, they never regret going after their dreams. Like, I have an interesting perspective as a medium because I hear what people have to say once they've passed. And it's never, I wish that I stayed small. I wish that I didn't go after my dreams. It's, if anything, it's, I wish I did it sooner. I wish I trusted my heart sooner. I wish I told that person how I really felt. I wish I started that job. I wish I published my work. It's have that bravery, step into that King of Wands. And it's really interesting too, and very synchronistic because so much ocean stuff is coming up. Like with this sitting with spirit, so much like water and ocean, like this spirit person coming through. But also, something I forgot to say is that when I was feeling into the angel messages, one of the first things I saw was this boat, like a sailboat, and it was like all the way on its side about to tip over. And it's almost like we're in this moment of, is the boat going to tip over or not? And I feel like this is a collective message. With that being said, there's also a message here about if it tips over, let it. There's something about we're all trying to keep things alive that maybe need to go. And sometimes we let these worst case scenarios of like the boat tipping over try to keep us like frantically trying to keep it upright, but maybe it just needs to tip over and maybe things need to spill out and maybe things need to be redone and maybe things need to be exposed. And so there's also a message here of if something is naturally falling away, let it. Don't exhaust yourself trying to fit a circle into a square peg.
Yeah, gosh, that's such a powerful lesson. And I think I've likened this with you to like the universe gives you gifts and then you hold on so tight to that gift because you think there's not going to be another gift. And then you start to get dragged and allowing what is naturally happening, even the boat tipping over, sometimes can be the greatest gift of all. Like things come so unexpectedly. And so even when something seems really bad, sometimes there can be something so beautiful because of it. And staying open to that, I think really helps us.
Absolutely. And that's like, I love Colette Baron Reed's Oracle deck, Wisdom of the Hidden Realms. It's the main card deck that I read with. And their card, The Lady of the Gift, whenever I pull it, the message that I get is like you're holding on to something so tightly that your hand isn't open to receive something that wants to come in next. And so it's like trying to hold on to grains of sand. It's just not going to work. It's going to flip through your fingers. And so there's this feeling of just like keeping your hands open and letting things go that want to go and having an open space for the new that wants to come in and not trying too hard to like control or cling on or force.
Yes, that's a perfect way to describe it.
I feel a lot of magic this week too. There's so much duality in the energy. There's like this collective crown and throat block. There's this fear. There's this feeling like things are at a crashing point. And there's also this opportunity for like deeper connection, deeper magic, new opportunity. And so there's two currents simultaneously. And it's normal as a human being, as part of the collective, to feel both. And that's a good thing. We don't want to bury our heads in the sand, but try to be part of the creative force, not the destructive force.
Yes. Magic.
Magic, magic. We love you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
For more information on Taylor and her work, go to angelsandamethyst.com or connect with her on Instagram at angels_and_amethyst. She is the one verified account with this name and will never DM you for a reading. If you have any questions about intuition, spirituality, angels, or anything and everything magical, please email contact@magichourpod.com. We will answer listener questions once a month in our solo episodes. Are you an aligned business owner that would like to advertise to our beautiful hummingbird community? Please email contact@magichourpod.com. Make sure you're subscribing to Magic Hour so you never miss the magic. And don't forget to leave us 5 sparkling star reviews. They help more magical people find the pod. Please screenshot and email your 5-star reviews to contact@magichourpod.com, and we'll send you a free downloadable angelic meditation and enter you to win an angel reading with Taylor Page. If you review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, we'll add your name twice. And if you share the podcast on your Instagram story and tag us, we'll add your name a 3rd time. The next giveaway will happen when we hit 222 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Thank you for listening to Magic Hour with Taylor Page. Remember, you are magic.